4 weeks now, which might be possible with some clients, but with some clients it isn't. So, again, we have to look at strategies again for managing our practice. I mean, does anybody have any ideas about how you might work with that?
I've had to, sorry.
No, maybe you go ahead.
I've had to do that a few times because my children are still in Australia and I'm back here. I've done that, but I've told them that, I'm available. And then I don't, of course, charge them, and I give them a full session either on WhatsApp or on the phone. I speak to them if there is something. And they can message, and I'm always responding if there is an emergency. Generally, I tell them the time frame that I'm going to be available. And I have lost clients because of that, because it's a big disadvantage, because you need that, the person sitting there, there's a different kind of a holding. A phone will never be able to sort of fulfill that need. So I've suffered because of that. That's something I want to really understand very well, how one must do that.
Well, on that question of like the phone or Skype or whatever, I would have to go, is that so?
That's right. I do Skype sessions and they pay me for it. Like, why would they not pay me for
actually,
it?
Actually, my husband induced guilt in me. He says, you are going for your own work. It's not the client's problem and you should not charge them. So I felt, okay, maybe I should.
There's the story.
That's the story.
That's interesting. I mean, like again, accepting necessarily not linear right or wrong, but
yes.
But this is one of the dilemmas that we kind of face. What do we do? I mean, somebody else had hands up.
Yeah, I do Skype sessions with her. But there are some clients who don't want to. So, and that's not. I also have lost a couple of clients, but I don't. My dilemma is I don't go for that long because of it. I'll go maybe 10 days, 12 days. Even if I'm going to the US and back, it's such a quick trip because. Even though when I've suggested, okay, you can go to somebody else, I can suggest someone.
That's what I did.
But they don't always want to take that.
I always tell my clients beforehand that I take 4 weeks off in a year, and if it is going to be okay with them, and I'm always available on WhatsApp, and I also give name of another therapist to go to in case they feel like, they have a very urgent need to go and see a therapist and they want me to recommend somebody. So I always leave a couple of names with them.
So even that's interesting though, right? Because everyone's like, I always tell them I'm always available on WhatsApp.
Yeah, that's something to look at because time difference.
But that in itself, I mean, then it's like just, is that so? Like,
exactly, because my own guilt gets triggered.
Right.
That's why I would say always available.
Right? Like, because I know that when we've spoken to our supervisor as well, and he said, well, like you don't have to always be there on WhatsApp. You say if there is an emergency, here are a list of numbers you can call. Here's the suicide helpline. No, we don't have that sort of thing necessarily here, which brings in its own set of questions, like then are we the suicide helpline and what that does to us, so that even when we go on holiday, we're also still always on call.
And I gently tell them, there's a 3 hours difference between Pakistan Standard Time and Perth Standard Time, so, anything before, I gently put it in, but if there's an emergency, I am available.
I think the norms of this profession are very different from the norms of maybe the other profession I'm practicing, which is law. I don't practice law now, I'm teaching, but then when we leave, that's the end of the day for us, and then you can only see us when we get the appointment or the next lecture is scheduled. But for this kind of profession, I think, for me personally, I think my connection with my client is maybe my need. It may not be an immediate response, but it is my need for them to know that I'm going to be available. I will be available.
I also travel, for me it's a done deal, basically, when I know I'm gone for a month. So I do inform them beforehand that this is a break I do take. And at the same time, I have a sense of the fragility of the client's need. some have been with me for a longer time. I know they can hold that urgency. Some are just joined in a little early because you don't know what you're taking in for, and suddenly this wound comes open and something happens and the work's deeper. So I give those particular clients, I give them my email address, order WhatsApp, and also explain to them that I am on holidays. You know, so how do you feel about that? And then, no, it's okay. With them, I will probably give them a referral. The rest, in some cases, I feel that it's okay for them also to be able to say, okay, this person also has their space, and I think that's a learning for my client also sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
To be able to say, yes, I can contain, because that's also something that's happening in that relationship where you don't want to have them feel this sense that you don't have a life and you owe them somehow something, you know, that way. That I've felt that when you come back and then they share the way they actually were able to manage, many times this amazing process happens there with that independence. You know, being able to actually start looking for their own personal resources.
Yeah, so you don't become a crutch for them.
So kind of being the good enough therapist.
Yeah.
Good, yeah, that's the way to put it probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, sometimes clients do really well when they don't see you.
Yes.
You could go, how was it? Great, it's great.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I mean, again, we're pulling out some key things here about being self-reflective, aren't we? Around like, is it my need, or is it the client? But, you know, thinking about structures and things that we can offer. You know, one is to give, you know, a range of colleagues' names, or, you know, to work closely with another colleague where you have an understanding with their client and yourself, that you will work with them while they are away. Yeah, I have a colleague who she's not a peer supervision person, but we know each other's work, and she always asks me, in particular during the summer, if there's a client, if I will babysit. And it really is in that kind of, you know, it's a holding space.
So would it have to be someone who's not in a peer supervision, or one of the peer supervisors?
I think
because
what's
they know most of the work that's been done without names, of course.
Yeah. I mean, with this particular colleague, we don't do peer supervision, but I've known her for a long time. We don't socialise particularly, you know, but she's kind of in my heart, if you like, as a practitioner. And we just have this thing, and you know, where like she'll say, "Are you up for babysitting?" You know, during the summer. And this year, I think she did take a month off because she finally got married, and that's a joke. So she took almost a month off, and so it worked out that I could hold her client for 3 weeks, and it was all very clear with the client. You know, it was part of the contract. But again, it's those things to think about, and these are really great kind of thoughts you're having, or just questioning oneself. You know, around, do I have to be working with my clients all the time? You know, I have that dilemma when I come here in terms of with a couple of clients. You know, where I say, no, if you need to connect, you're welcome to connect. Chances are they won't, but I allow it on the basis I'm working anyway. You know what I mean? It's not a holiday where, you know, I kind of switch off from stuff. In fact, usually what happens when I come here, everything gets cranked up, you know, in a really good way. But But we have to make those decisions, you know, and again use that self-reflexivity.
I found that often too, it opens quite a bit of space between myself and the client, and sometimes quite interesting things might emerge there too. It's like where actually it's like the space then gets discussed between us. Like it very much, I mean, I try anyway to bring it then in the room, what it's like for them when, you know, I'm leaving for some time. And yes, there is, you know, somebody available for them. They want to reach out to me. they can. I think every one of my clients is different too. I won't just make an across the board thing either.
I think that's really important, isn't it? That it's an individual thing too, you know, with our clients. But I think it's really helpful to question those things around how available am I and whose need is that. You know, even those things like, I think it's really helpful to just, you know, question ourselves. Do I charge or don't I charge? Let's really, you know, bring that in. It's part of the important stuff of your independent practice. You know, you may not need it, but I think it's always helpful, but other colleagues in the profession may. So if you make yourself cheap, are you taking away business from others too? Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
You know, I'm really aware of the project that we do in East Wing in Westbury where I work, where we do offer no-cost counselling. So practitioners, you know, offer their time, no cost and low cost. But I'm always very clear that part of our principle is we don't take away anybody's work. Yeah. And the truth is that, you know, for other practitioners who are paid, like myself, I get paid very well for my work. But the reality is that the clients who we see wouldn't be seeing a therapist anyway, because they couldn't afford it. Yeah, so we don't take business away. But again, it's part of that thing of working, you know, as an independent practitioner. It's partly about me, but it's also partly about the profession as a whole, isn't it? So it's not just about thinking about me. It's about the standing of our work as a whole too. It becomes important. Does that kind of make sense? You know, we're holding our practice not just as Jan Moyse's practice, but as psychotherapy, you know, as a whole. You know, how I, you know, ethically, how I respond in it is important for the standing of the work. Good. So shall we spend just a short time just grounding you a little bit in the tasks? That's what I thought I'd do today, which is about, you know, using this activity, this guided learning activity, and this is one of the tasks that you are going to are required to do. Remember in the handbook it detailed all of the things you needed to do, and that there would be 2 guided learning activities, and so on. Ideally we would have started this in March, but we didn't.
It was sent by email, but I'm not sure if you got it, but I think there is a...
Maybe I need to, shall I ask Ali to make sure that you all have
You can
a copy?
resend it.
But the handbook basically gives an outline of the course that I...
Here's the course outline, and then
There is a
CPCAB.
course outline, but not the full handbook.
Assignment schedule is here, which needs to be changed. And
Yeah, excellent. We can check that just to be sure. This is really good. This is where we're going to, you know, hopefully this evening we'll have a good sense that we're all starting from the same place. And that you've all got the right bits of paper. But the course handbook was what I had to submit to CPCAB in order for them to give us, you know, to accredit the course. So to some extent we have to stick with that. But maybe I'll try and get Ali to make sure we've all got copies of it. So even tomorrow we can just do a tick checklist through all the bits that you need to do. But in terms of the time scale, let me do the time scale as well before doing this. is that ideally, had it all gone to plan, we would be winding up now. Yeah. And that you would have had various bits of paper in and everything. So this session with me now, this would have been where we'd be bringing in your portfolios and all your bits of work and so on. Clearly that wasn't able to happen. So the time frame has shifted now. I imagined you would know that. So what's going to happen is I will probably come again, I think in January-ish time, to do the final bits of working, but you will have up until potentially June to get in all your bits and pieces.
So in
June. So I think that's when, and I need to double check with CPCAB because June I'll be working to their tune essentially, because they have little, as an awarding body, you know, organisations and colleges all over the UK and beyond, you know, sort of send their work in at specific times for assessment. So I need to work with them, but I'm suggesting by June, so probably the end of May, we would hope that you would have all the bits and pieces together. The other bit we need to think about is me, in terms of, because there's a lot of assessment to be done. Yeah, like me assessing you in terms of all of these bits of paper that you're going to be writing.
And there's a lot of us.
Yes.
And one of you.
Yeah, yeah. So I need to be working that out as well. Which is why I'm going to invite you to do a lot of the work yourself with this, because you're independent practitioners as well. Yeah. So it's not just about me assessing. So I'm also giving a nod to the independent practitioner nature of this training. And it's also good practice for you within peer supervision as well. I will revisit with you tomorrow the timetable and things, and you'll have a good idea of the handbook. Yeah. I'm sorry this is being a bit business-like, but it's what we also need to do to bring some structure into the training.
So Jan, I have a question, because there was like Michael's coming back in August. That has nothing to do with Level 5. I just want to clarify that.
Yes, it does. Yeah. In as much as Michael's part of the, what do you mean, August of?
Next year.
No, that is for a workshop.
Yeah.
Qualified workshop.
Yeah.
Okay, not for
Yeah,
class.
yeah. No, sorry, I was thinking like no, I
Okay,
was
so
thinking
Ben
the
had
August.
also mentioned he's coming
Yeah.
in March, so
Yeah.
I was just wondering
Okay.
if that is connected to this.
Probably till March, you would be still doing this, right? So maybe Michael will be coming again, probably that's.
I don't know, that's why I'm.
Well, I am hoping that you will have done all the work that you need to do by the time, of my second visit. Yeah.
When are you coming again?
I think January-ish time. I need to double check. But again, for me, it's also trying to work when I can take 2 weeks out with my private practice too.
But it's going to be the month of Jan.
I need to be
Okay,
double.
all right, okay.
It could be because sometimes I come over during that Christmassy time, don't I? Because that helps me, because that's when clients don't. I don't work with clients.
Can this long list here that originally then had all the dates on it and the
Yeah.
time frame,
Mm-hmm.
will you then redo all that?
So this piece of work, I would suggest, coming back to here, that maybe you can do within the next month. Okay, because it's not a lot of work. It isn't a lot of work. And what I'm suggesting is that you might want to work with this in a peer group. Okay? If you haven't got a peer group, don't worry, this is going to be the next task that we're going to look at. So you might want to work with this in your group, either by discussing it in your group, or, and I always think this is great practice, getting your peer members to critique it with you and for you. In other words, to read it. Yeah? And then you get a good sense of, like, being able to help each other. By saying, not sure that works, or oh, that's really good. Oh, I think you might have another criteria there as well. Yeah. And the way you record it is through, you should all have a criteria assessment sheet there. Now, those of you who qualified ages ago, criteria assessment sheets will go right over your heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see the criteria assessment sheet? Yeah. And what you do, and again this is where you can maybe work with a peer group, is you'll notice on it, you put down your name and the qualification. You don't need to worry about a group or coursework. And on there, you need to fill that in. You need to claim your criteria. What that means is you tell me and your colleagues, whether you've got that or not. So I'm suggesting that if you do that bit on describe some of the differences in your practice from being agency focused to working independently, your answers to that, I am imagining, will touch on 1.1 of the criteria. So you might have a look at the criteria and see whether it does or not. But in theory, you will start to answer that criteria or show that you're competent. Yeah. Have you got the criteria there?
Yeah.
Would you read out 1.1? Yeah.
1.1 says demonstrate understanding of issues relating to setting up and managing an independent practice. That's 1.1.
Yep, so if you answer that, can you see how you tick? You'll meet that criteria.
I think you might also meet 1.2 actually.
I think you probably will, yeah.
Because 1.2 says work within an appropriate ethical and professional framework for independent practice.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, well, if you then look at the second question, it says, what key areas of a professional framework are important to you as an independent practitioner?
And then you'll meet 1.2 and 1.3, because 1.3 says demonstrate a capacity to understand and work as an ethical practitioner.
Can you see
So
how it
there.
goes? Can you see, so when you start talking with each other, share with each other, like saying, just like Anita's just done there. But I think you'll get that one as well. Yeah. So that's what you can do with each other. So then when you fill in your CAS sheet, you just write down there, you write down the criteria number. Yeah. Can you see that, the second one? You can put unit number, but you just need to write down the criteria number, the page number. Well, this is a short page, so it's probably likely to be page 1 or 2. And then, at some point, hopefully everybody in your group agrees with that, and it will be then just a mere formality for me to sign it off. Yeah. Can you see then how that completely saves me the energy of pouring through a piece of work, saying and trying to guess where you're thinking it's coming from. Yeah. It's and in many ways this makes sense for you to assess each other on it. Yeah. Unit 1.
That's the one.
Yeah.
This side.
And page number refers to this particular handout?
Nope, it's your answer. So you tell me where on your, so let's imagine you've got 2.5 sheets that you've spent writing this guided learning exercise. Yeah. So I'm imagining that first one is likely to be on page 1. Yeah. And then probably the others maybe page 1 and 2 or 2.
So Jan, this actually needs to come on top of all our assignments when we're handing them in?
You will, yeah, any piece of work that you do, you put one of these on, yeah, and this becomes important for CPCAB because their verifier checks whether, you've done what you've said you've done. So this is the evidence. This becomes the evidence sheet. Yeah.
Actually, it works for us also when we're writing and our thoughts are all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
To give us some structure.
Exactly.
What are we responding to?
Yeah, exactly. And what's really helpful is, I think it does that. The only caution I would give you is, because it's a problem with criteria-led trainings, is you end up squeezing yourself into the criteria. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The criteria says, da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. So you go, okay, I'll answer the question this way, just so I meet the criteria, yeah, rather than writing and then noticing, that the criteria, comes to you almost, if that makes sense,
So we go the
rather
opposite
than,
route.
yeah, exactly. That's the only thing to be aware of.
It's like the difference between working for an agency and being an independent practitioner.
Thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
So just here we take it to a peer group, and the yes, no would come in by consensus of opinion, and then you would do the tutor here or
I officially sign it off. I officially do the yes or the no.
Okay.
But I'm trusting that if you've gone through the process, it will be a formality for me. Yeah.
So these blocks here and the final signature will be.
That will be me saying, yes, great, yes, wow, interesting thought, yes, yada, 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 or whatever. But in many ways, from my side, the work has been already done by you being a reflective practitioner and by you sharing your practice with each other. And then you being good peer supervisees and saying things like, is that so? Yeah, or whatever, yeah. And I'm doing it that way because can you see this models good, independent practitioner working? Yeah, that's why I'm doing it that way. Yeah, and it's also about not infantilizing you, and saying, this is the bit around where, the stabilizers have come off our wheels and you're cycling on your own, if you like, and with the help of each other. That's what I'm really inviting you to develop in terms of your practice.
And also, Jan, so just for some clarity, so the guided learning exercises, I'm guessing they're following just an academic essay sort of and a reflective essay kind of format where you're expecting a references section at the end.
You could do it though for the guided learning, that doesn't have to be for level 5 you actually don't need to be doing, you don't need to be following Harvard referencing and stuff. That's not a necessary requirement. But I think what is helpful, if you're going to say something, particularly when it comes to the stuff in Unit 4 and Unit 6, which asks you to use research and also to be clear about your theoretical model, those units in particular would be the units where we would be expecting you to quote something from the diamond model or whatever model you're kind of using. So, Anita, you've got the criteria there. Maybe you can read out something from one of the section 6. Read a 6 one, the first one.
6, the first one. 6 as a unit says demonstrate a coherent framework, theory, skills and research in therapeutic practice as an independent practitioner.
Yeah.
And 6.1 says apply broad spectrum integration of theory in working with implicit process in the therapeutic relationship.
Okay, now that sounds like language, but if you've done work with Michael, yeah.
And some of Michael's written over there.
Sorry?
On my paper, I've written Michael.
Yeah, brilliant. That's exactly it. Well, that's why I wrote the criteria. Yeah, to make it straight so that it fits in with what I knew Michael would be teaching.
It says in 6.2, it says use a coherent theoretical framework and research findings to enhance own practice.
Yeah.
And the 6.3 talks about the diamond model also.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
we
was
were
the
doing
Skype
on the
session you
Skype
mentioned
session.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Michael
Yeah.
would be looking at.
Yeah. Because I knew that Michael's work was very specific to an integrative training, so that's why this is your the units are geared towards you meeting the requirements. So can you see how in Unit 6 in particular, and we can have a little look at Unit 4 as well, but that would be one of the places where you'd be saying, like if you're going to make some statement around an implicit process, or an unconscious thing, then it would make sense to quote Winnicott or whoever is relevant. But there will be an essay where again the essay. I'll give you that maybe nearer the end of the week because I don't want to give you too much. But there will be an essay where you have to describe your understanding of this work in relation to clients. Yeah. So that essay will automatically enable you to meet that criteria. Yeah. So because one of the titles will be something like, give your understanding of the diamond model and its applications in the use of client work. Yeah. So then you'll just need to, in your words, describe. Yeah. So you'll meet that. You will achieve that also. Unit 4 does invite you to reflect a little bit on not so much research, but we'll just say research, but more about Unit 4 is very much about understanding the complexity of the relationship, the client-counselor relationship. So there's, you'll have opportunities to do lots of good referencing.
But in the guided learning, it's not necessary.
No, they're kind of, generally what I'm saying with all of the guided learning exercises is that's a good opportunity to practice with your peers as well. So think of the guided learning as a bit like just a nice, well, hopefully like this one, it will be a nice kind of pondering your practice. Yeah. The guided learning tends to be a little bit more self-reflective. Yeah. And hopefully what you will see then in your portfolio is you'll be building, a whole set of things. Yeah, you'll be just slowly building it, and then I'll tell you towards the end of the course how you kind of tick it all off so that it can be signed off for CPCAD. Okay. So is that kind of making a little bit more sense? There is a kind of a pathway in all of this.
It's not 7 yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 7 yet.
So what I'd like us to think about, unless do you have any more questions about this? Or are you happy to let the framework unfold?
To read it well,
Yeah.
and we have a lot more questions.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, well let's really, I mean, what I really want this week to be, and it would have been had I come before, to be a week of helping you to put the structure together. Yeah, so all of those questions hopefully would have been, you know, we'd have addressed way back then. Yeah. But this was impossible to do on Skype, in fact.
Jan, could you maybe say something about work with relational complexity in the therapeutic relationship? So what kind of relational complexity are we required to work on, talk about?
Well, my sense is that that would be the stuff that's arising from your practice. Yeah. And we've already had lots of good examples today around, you know, those edges that we've met, that we meet with clients. Or it might be an example that arose in session, let's say for example with Michael. Yeah, maybe there was a fishbowl exercise or something, where there was some relational complexity. So that would be where, like, is this my material? Is it your material? That's relational complexity, isn't it? Where my story meets the client's story. Yeah. Do you remember the thing we were talking about earlier on around the complexity I gave of my supervisee? Well, in fact, the complexities with all of those stories with my supervisee of what's going on here if you're falling in love with a client. There's a good relational complexity that he could have written about. Yeah, so could my supervisee whose client arrived drunk. Yeah, and particularly the fallout afterwards of that. Who, you know, we've answered questions about who were you then for the client in that moment? You know, were you some punishing parent? Yeah, what dynamic got set up there? You know, what would Michael's ideas say there? You know, around the transferential dynamics.
When we bring out a contract, what will become the authority?
The moment we
Bring out a contract, the therapist goes out of the window, and then there is this authority who's telling the client, these are my terms.
It could be, you know, but it could also be like it's in the room, let's work with it.
And sometimes with therapists, they ask also the client, do you want to include some clause in the contract? And I feel like that softens the whole contract business, right? Where it's like, actually, this is a relationship, and so is there anything that you want to
It's
bring?
very much like the parents, you do this for me, or is there anything, but you know, this is what you have to do for me.
It's a relational complexity.
Well, and it is also about, like, I guess the stuff in Unit 2 as well comes in here, Unit 2 and Unit 4, which is where, you know, it is exactly this around, you know, like a strong framework for one client can be heaven.
Sorry, what did you say?
A strong framework for one client can be heaven.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, phew, I know where I am. Yeah, you know, somebody who has, you know, like, and again, if we think of Winnicott here, you know, whose experience either are too tight holding or too loose. Yeah, having a contract, phew, that's so good. Yeah, for somebody else, it may very well trigger, you know, the paternal wound. Yeah, the father wound. like, where I'll just battle away. I will be the absolute rebel to this. Yeah.
Which is, I think, learning and a lot of curiosity towards the client. Therapists can actually have a lot of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
To basically bring in the material with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So something you shared, like instead of a therapist getting overwhelmed by it,
Mm-hmm.
and just staying with that and exploring that. It's tricky, yes,
Mm.
because I'm sure there are lots of fears probably might kick in. I might lose this client and they might not come back. All those things might come.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that there is a lot of work possibility there also.
Mm-hmm.
Given the way the experience is on that.
Mm-hmm.
And when to bring out the contracts, you have to sort of change according to the atmosphere, the first encounter, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, this is tricky stuff, isn't it, around how I do that?
Yeah, in front of the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my contract, I
Just
have
get
the
the
very
reception.
basic things. And like you're saying, then one can negotiate,
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the client wants to put in or what. But the very basic thing like punctuality and, if you come late, you cannot have extra time. If you cancel, you make the payment. The very basic confidentiality,
Mm-hmm.
things that cannot be compromised on. And then as you see a client, the way they are, you could add something to the contract if you needed to. That's one way, I think, that you can.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're prepared to work with the material that it raises. So it's a bit like, when you were just saying there around, well, of course I just include this, and and of course if you turn up a little late, there won't be any time after. Some clients will really take you up on that one. They will really push that boundary, like not budge.
Yes, too.
Yeah, but it's, I guess what we're noticing is, well, everything is material. Everything is material in the room. So, whether you have, whether you don't, have a written contract or whether you do, it's going to come into the space. So that whole bit around relational complexity, it's just about kind of seeing it's there.
It's very easy to tell them why you can't give them those 10 minutes that they've missed out in the beginning, because the room needs to be used by another therapist, which or another client is coming in.
Yeah, but hey, if I've come back with my background as being the youngest in the family, who always had to make do, that's going to really poo me off. God, they get their 10 minutes. I can't even have my 10 minutes, yeah? Because somebody else comes in and takes my 10 minutes. Well, I'm not going to, this is war, this is the relation, the dynamics, the enactments here.
But then they learn, you see, that there's learning there for the client as well.
Exactly.
And also for the therapist, sometimes you have to be more
For people who can't say
flexible
no.
with your contracting also. You may have contracted that it's going to be a 50-minute session, but sometimes I feel the need of the client is to be with that client for another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
You also have to be aware that some of them will bring up something right in the last 15
Yes, that
minutes.
also tends to happen.
They will, so you have to know.
Go, it's a judgment call there and then.
Yeah.
If sometimes you hold the boundary and sometimes you kind of.
It's also the pattern.
Yeah, pattern to pattern. Sometimes they do
It's
that.
very interesting about this. Is a client first session. I'm talking about confidentiality and everything. Her mother had actually brought her in, and after 5 minutes, she said, "Can I call my mother inside?" And I said, "No, I'm just thinking about the confidentiality and what all this." I said, "Do you really want to?" And she just couldn't sit. And I sat there and I said, "Okay, if you feel like it." It's so not right, all that stuff was in my head, but there was something happening there, and it gave me so much insight into her life. Want to open the door, run out, check the mother's there, and she would ask her the mother to come inside. The mother said, no, you go, and then she would come inside. It happened, it was nerve-wracking for the first session, but I just sat there. My second session, she was fine. but there was a lot of material there.
Mhm.
But if I had sat there and said, no, you can't, this is the way it is, this is how it works, and I don't think so that relationship would have worked, would have run, because it was so uncomfortable for us, for her to sit there without the reassurance of the mother sitting on side, and she will be allowed to go and
Yeah.
move.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let us just keep staying open to this, and I guess what Shaista was doing was kind of raising a question around, which is really helpful for us to think like how do I give the contract? What do I give? And it's just really helpful to ponder that, isn't it? Around am I telling them? It's a bit like, can I feel almost this pointy finger coming out a little bit, in a disguised way? You can only have an hour. And that's grand if that's what it is, but it's how we do it, that becomes important. So it's that my capacity to self-reflect and really hear how I'm being received. There's also something around like my fear of engaging in a working relationship, which is what we have with clients. Yeah. Which is a working relationship. We are